everyone. So this is like a super basic sort of, trans girl YouTuber sort of subject. I figured that while I'm still sort of in this foundational phase of my channel, people are still getting to know me, that, hey, these are things that like, there can't really be too many of them on YouTube because, it's very much, this is something that varies from person to person. So, yeah, I figured it might be worth it to just talk about how HRT, hormone replacement therapy, has affected me, right? I've got everything I think I need. Got my tea, got my coffee, and yeah, otherwise, I don't know. I feel like this is a good conversation to have either if you are maybe a trans person who is pre-transition and kind of trying to learn as much as you can. Maybe you're someone who I know who's wanted to ask me about these sort of things but felt a little awkward too. Or maybe you're just someone who's curious. All right. There's going to be a lot I'm going to cover, right? I'll cover most ground that's PG-13. If there's anything below the belt, so to speak, I'm just gonna let you go ahead and Google that. I'll say here that whatever you find is probably applicable to me, but yeah, I'm not gonna go into much more detail than that. It's a little personal, and yeah, so that's all I'm gonna say on that front. Otherwise, let's go ahead, shall we? Oh my god, I love that. So, I guess the best place to start is to tell you when I began HRT, right? I began HRT on April 4th of 2018. Today is January 21st of 2020, so I'm coming up in a couple months here on 2 years on HRT, right? So I've been through a decent bit. I've been through the gambit. The vast majority of things, right? There's still a little bit shaking out here on the back end, but for the most part, I've had a decent experience with it, right? Or decent, I've gone through most of the standard kind of stuff that you hear and read about, right? But if we're going in order, when I started, right? If we're going by effects, right? The first thing I probably noticed, the very first thing I noticed was a giant relief, right? And it's hard to say whether or not that came about as a result of the medication itself or just basically, when I started taking the medication, that in and of itself was such a major relief for me, right? I was finally, because, most trans people can imagine, a lot of us go our entire lives kind of wondering, A, if we're ever going to come out, and B, if we are, if we're going to be able to get onto HRT, right? That's something which a lot of, again, I make the caveat here, HRT is not necessary for transition. I guess I'm more talking from my own personal experience and the feelings I've seen from enough other trans people online that I can ascribe that to more than just myself, right? But yeah, it's definitely not necessary. But for me, right, it was a massive weight off my shoulders, right? That I was at least starting. That was at least day one, got into it. And that in and of itself had a lot of really good effects on me, right? And again, over the course of the next couple months, just following along with mental effects, right? It's hard to tell exactly what during that point was the medication affecting me and what was just better mental health from having this giant weight off my shoulders and actually starting what I've wanted to do for so long, right? When I took that, I was, that would have put me either towards the beginning or somewhere right in the middle of my spring semester of my senior year of undergrad. People who are watching who know me from undergrad, it's a fun fact that you just learned about. Maybe that'll connect some dots, I don't know. But yeah, it was good that happened to me when it did, because I was dealing with a lot at that point in my life. For those of you who have watched my channel before, I've talked a little bit about how I had previously ended the one of, if not the most serious relationship I have been in the course of my life, right? And that happened a couple months prior, towards the end of the previous year, 2017. And I was in a rough place for a while, but eventually I just kind of came to the conclusion, like, well, got nothing else to lose, and I started, and it was good for my mental health, right? It was good to start, and it felt like I was living for myself for the first time in a while. Now that, coupled with, again, like, it's hard to tell how much of, the mental effect of, like, my improved mental well-being being, like, that aspect, and how much of it was, like, for example, being on testosterone blockers and just being able to think more clearly and not having, like, guy hormones coursing through me, right? Because, like, another effect after I started on HRT was that, it does kind of decrease your libido, right? And this is, like, a sensitive subject. Not a lot of people have talked about it, but let me, like, clarify here, just to, like, put it on the table so that people can talk about it and we can all be adults in the room. It's not really a bad thing, right? When I say decrease libido, like, I would still feel a sex drive, right? It's just I had more control of it, right? Like, that's just how it was. Like, I've never lost the ability to do sex, right? Like, I've had other partners, and the specifics of which are private and we do not need to go into, like I said earlier. But, like, practically speaking, like, I know that I was very worried about, oh, am I going to lose the ability to do that? Or, oh, am I not going to be able to have... You'll be fine. All right? You'll be fine. In fact, maybe better, because, again, like, it's not like you're going to have a pressing need to have to deal with it, right? I know that when you're on testosterone, from personal experience, that sometimes, you can, like, it can get to you, and it can just make you feel like, that you have to do something about it right now, right? It's almost like you don't have it's almost as if, not that you don't have control over it, but that it's more a burden that you have to take care of. And I have not felt that in forever, right? I'm, I have a much better relationship with that aspect of my being now than at any point in my life. So, cool. And that's something that came on pretty early. That was within the first couple months. So that, helped clear my mind up as well. Really made me, and so, like, all of that put together, like, my head being clearer, both just with a weight off my shoulders and with, testosterone not being testosterone in me. Yeah, like, I did really, really well during my senior year of college. I was able to get my honors thesis completed, right? There was a point where I was really, if my professor is ever going to watch this, first off, I'm sorry that you've had to sort of hear some of the things up until now, but this might explain to you, there was a point during the year, especially earlier on, where I know that you were a little bit worried about me and I was falling behind, and I told you there were things going on, but I didn't tell you what they were, and, there's I specifically was vague because I didn't want to tell you this is what was happening, and I know I'm out to you right now, and maybe you've connected these dots already, but this is, for a lot of the senior year, I was really depressed. I was really, really struggling to get by, and really, once this part of my life started, that was when I sort of puke and rallied and, pulled off an entire thesis, right? As well as graduated and all that, and also did very well in mock trial. I had done college mock trial for the previous 3 years of my undergraduate experience, and I did fine, right? I've been on the national team a couple times. I had competed consistently, but senior year comes around, and it was funny because at the beginning of the year, I actually started doing less work than in any year prior because I was depressed and recovering from shit and all that. Again, people who are watching who knew me from then, connecting dots. But weirdly enough, that was actually the year I did the best out of all of my years of undergrad, because eventually, like, you know, there was some combination of, like, I switched to witnessing, and this won't mean much to people who don't know the activity, but it just meant that I had to do, like, it was more based on acting rather than, like, rigorous preparation for, like, it was, like, less rigorous attorney preparation and more just, like, being a likable witness, and I guess I had enough personality for that. And especially once I started on, like, HRT and my medications and whatnot, like, my mind was so clear. Like, I could just be the most comfortable person up on the witness stand, and apparently that just worked. And I ended up getting onto the A team for, like, the first time as, like, a full-time, like, starter, I guess you'd call it, role, since getting to school, which was crazy. But, yeah, so I can say from personal experience that HRT did have and has had, like, so many positive mental benefits, and it's only continued, right? Like, now I'm in law school, and I did wonderful last semester, right? Like, I got a wonderful GPA. I've applied to a lot of places, and I have, like, 3 interviews already lined up. And I have one job, or, like, I already have one job offer. So, like, I'm chilling, right? And, you know, maybe you can tell from just watching me speak on up here. Like, I like to think I'm a very comfortable and thoughtful person. Of course, I'm a bad judge of my own character, but, you know, if you think the same, then, you know, I would like to think that a large part of that has been because of my experiences with transition and, you know, my medications and all that. So, yeah, that's sort of like across the board, really good for my mental health. Physical changes. Moving on. First, coffee. So physical changes are sort of a journey, right? I'm going to say that up front. Just as the caveat, because, like, I went in, and everyone goes in with this idea that you're going to start taking your medication and you're going to immediately see changes, right? And it just doesn't work that way. So basically the timeline for me, the first thing, like, something that you will notice pretty quickly off the bat, within, like, the first couple weeks, you're going to notice your skin change in that it's going to go, it's not going to be as oily anymore, right? If you're, mind you, I forgot to make this caveat early on, but it's sort of assumed. I'm talking about, like, trans women and, like, the kind of hormone replacement therapy I've gone through. I can't speak to what trans guys and non-binary people go through. I forgot to make that caveat up front, but just so we're clear. So, like, when I went on HRT, like, pretty quickly my skin, like, I noticed, because before I even had, like, not terrible acne, but, like, I would still get acne, and my skin was really oily and very just coarse and, like, just very guy-y, right? And that was one of, like, the coolest things, was that, like, very quickly after I started, I would just wake up and I would go to, like, wipe my face in the morning, or, like, after I work out, and I'd realize, oh my god, I'm not, like, oily, sweaty anymore, right? And I would start to sweat, and I realized, like, and I don't know, like, the science behind this, and I don't know if this is just particular to me or whatever, but, like, my sweat started not smelling terrible, and, like, I don't know, I just felt a lot less yeah, less oily, less stinky, less all that. Great terms. And that's something that'll come on pretty quick if you start. And yeah. But otherwise, things do come relatively slow. So to give you ideas about where I was, for the next 3 months or so, there's not really a whole lot. I have a video of like my timeline on my YouTube channel. I believe it's my first video, right? I do it for like a year to a year and a half, or zero, like when I started, the day I started to a year and a half. And you'll see for like a good while starting out, like change is really slow and you've just got to be patient. The most noticeable thing that happens is after 3 months, your chest will start doing its thing, or at least that's what mine did, right? And I gotta say that was actually kind of terrifying because like they kind of jumped out there quick. Like they came in like extremely fast, like fast enough to where like this was disproportionately much further ahead of like everything else, and I was just like, fuck, this is I mean, great, but also the fuck am I supposed to do with this, right? Because I was still very much presenting as guy, and so like it just looked very weird for me to walk around with a t-shirt where I'm this otherwise like athletic build and I'm tenting here. So yeah, that was weird. Very quickly grew into I remember there were like a combinations of, you know, like a lot of early transition trans people go through this sort of a phase, right, where you're wearing like a couple sweatshirts or one sweatshirt constantly everywhere. I had this blue throw over jacket / sweatshirt. It's funny because my father gave it to me. But I wore that like literally everywhere, right? Like people probably got sick of me seeing it, so like seeing me wear it so much, but I wore that shit everywhere I went because I was terrified that if I took it off, then people would see my chest. Again, people who knew me back then, context. God, this feels so good. And so, yeah, I noticed that. And then throughout, like, the rest of early, like, 3 months to 6 months, there were some changes in my body. Like, I recently did a before and after from, like, a picture I took in just, like, my workout gear a couple days ago to, like, 2 years ago. My body has been through a lot of overall change, but it's hard to tell. Like, I remember when I was looking at myself back then very closely, it was hard to tell how my body was changing overall, right? It was really hard to see like how that was being affected. I could see my face soften a little, right? People are always looking for that. Like when I was for the first couple months especially, I would take a picture like every single day to see like, oh, am I changing? Oh, is it happening? Oh, is it happening? And like over the first couple months, unless you're already like a super feminine person and you're already basically close to passing, which happens, and I'm happy for you, and that's all I have to say. But for me, it was a very slow process, right? And so eventually, like around 4 months in, I just like I started like I didn't stop taking pictures, but I started tapering off, so it wasn't like every single day, just because like I almost worked myself up too much over it. Like, I don't know. You're just constantly looking for something. You're constantly like measuring every single little change, and eventually I started to doubt myself, right? Eventually, like, and that's sort of usually what from what I've read from other people online and from what I understand, this is something that happens right around 4 to 6 months. You start to, or I'll just, speak in the first person. I really started to wonder how this was going to turn out, right? If it was going to be worth it, if I was going to be passable, all that, right? And that is like the worst feeling, right? And the only thing I can tell you on that is that, well, I mean, like, not the only thing, trust me. Like, I make it sound like it's something bad. No, you will be fine, right? It's just for some people, it just takes a little bit longer than others. And for me, really, I didn't start, like, eventually, like, right around 7-8 months, that's when I started noticing effects on my face, although I wasn't close to passing yet. And I did not start passing consistently until I was a year in, or just shy of a year. It was interesting because it was actually the exact same time I moved to Florida. There was a time during my transition, before I came to law school, when I lived in Florida with my grandparents for a couple months. And when I moved there, and I didn't realize it really before I went down, right? Like, I didn't know how close I was, but I went down there and I started getting gendered female consistently, right? Part of it may have been that I was out to my grandmother, my yaya, who I've talked about before, and who is like my best friend and one of the greatest people in the world. And she was super supportive, and, she was able to be someone there to be like, Riley, you look great. We're going to go out and get you some clothes. We're going to, like, walk down the strip, walk down the beach. We're going to build you up some confidence. We're going to get you there. Like, you're fine. We're just going to build you up your confidence so that we can help you, see how beautiful you are. And I really appreciated that. And so, yeah. But, like, I look at my pictures. Like, I looked at my timeline. Like, I've watched that, like, so many times. You don't even know. But I watched it, and I really think that I don't know what happened, but it was, like, right around the time I got to Florida, there was something, and I can't tell what it is, but there was some part of my facial features that just, like something flipped. I can't tell what it is. It's something super subtle, but something flipped, and now I started getting, like, for the most part, gendered correctly. Again, with, minor hiccups here and there, but, like, definitely more than half the time, probably even more than, like, 2/3 or 3/4 of the time, right? That was crazy, right? But also great for my mental health, because, like, now I was in, like, largely a new space, or at least a space where people weren't really familiar with me, and I was free to sort of explore, myself, and to be able to socially transition in a very, safe environment. I'll probably do a video on my time living in Florida more in depth another day, because that deserves its own video. It was a really good experience for me. Got really close with my grandparents during that time as well. And they're wonderful, and they deserve that recognition. But anyway, what I noticed when I got down there as well, because up until I went down there, mind you, I moved down there right at the end of winter 2019, like right at the beginning of the year, beginning of spring. And before that, I had the cold. I came from Tennessee and Arkansas, and there it was cold, and I had the excuse of just being able to throw on, like, baggy sweats and, like, a large sweatshirt, the same blue jacket, whatever, from my father, right? That I'd basically worn everywhere. It's funny, I haven't seen that in a while. I'm pretty sure I don't have it anymore. But yeah, that was the first time where I was able to actually kind of get, like, take stock of my body, because now it was warm down there, and I couldn't wear sweaters around unless I wanted to die. And I know that there are some trans people who, take that risk and be safe, drink water. That's all I'll say on that. But yeah, I actually noticed that I started wearing like sports bras and like, women's shorts and all that. And my body actually was at that point looking a lot better. Again, it's hard to tell exactly when that shift sort of happened. I think that was that was right around a year on HRT. So I can tell you with certainty that within a year, that's when I saw a large shift in the overall shape of my body. And that's really that's one of the main things that has continued through this year, is that like during the first year, like there was some change in my body, but not as much. This second year has been a lot more focused on just like my body sort of catching up with me, which has been awesome. And it's been great. Like I wore this dress, this one I'm wearing right now, and like I put it on this morning and I was like, damn, I got curves. And it was like the greatest feeling ever. And I went into school and like I took some pictures and I like sent it to a bunch of my friends and like my mom and my yaya. And they were all like, oh my God, Riley. And I was like, I know. And yeah, it's just, yeah. Life's good in that regard. So yeah, at that point my face had changed enough, so like, that's when I was passing consistently. My face had changed enough. My breasts were still growing out. My mom has bought most of my bras. I'm pretty sure I'm at like a healthy B right now, which is chill, cool. Yeah. They pretty much, like, they sometimes go through small spurts here and there, but for the most part, they got in a lot of their growing in the first year, and it's just kind of been like small little, like filling out ever since then. And honestly, after that, like after that point, it's been sort of a, nothing too major since. My body's continued to fill out. My waist has gotten a lot better. Like there's been a lot of just sort of finishing up here and there, ever since sort of the 1 year mark. But otherwise, most of the major changes came definitely during that first year. So I'm trying to think if there's anything else I can supplement. Small little head notes. My hair. I've had a lot of people ask me about that, and that's actually, I'm pretty sure, just genetics. I actually don't really do too much with my I've recently started using a purple shampoo for making it a little lighter, and I use like some generic like honey based conditioner, and I have like a leave-in conditioner that, and like I'll switch around the brand, but like otherwise it's just how it is, so it's nothing too much there. Yeah, I don't know. My voice is not something that came about as a result of HRT. This isn't a surprise to people who are in the trans community who are watching. But for those of you who are cis, who aren't trans, and who are, and wanted to know if that was something that happened, that's not. This is, and again, like, even, and I'll make a small caveat here, like, it's, like, I know it's not perfectly passable. At best, it's usually like a coin toss, right? Like, I try to be self-aware, but I'm happy with it, right? It's very effective for public speaking. Hopefully it will make me effective in this arena, but no, that's not something that came about as a result of HRT. That was just me getting therapy and lots of practice. Is there anything else? I did FFS. That's obviously unrelated. That's why my brow ridge and my nose are such. And yeah, I think that's largely it. I realize now that I'm thinking about that, there's a good amount of content that I cut out because I'm not talking about what's down there. There's stuff to talk about, but again, I don't feel comfortable with it, and you have the internet. Just use Google, you hooligans. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So I hope that you enjoyed the discussion. I'm using this similar format from my previous video. If you like it, then hey, let me know down in the doodly-doo, the comments and all that. And comment, like, subscribe, all that. Follow me on this stuff here. Yeah, that's cool. And alright, enough self-promotion. I'll talk to y'all later, fam. Bye.